shut down the OutQ. And another thing
Mm-hmm.
that's I think strange that's kind of happening a bit too. We have a big glossy here called Outlook magazine, but it's a series of magazines all over the country, but it's owned by a straight corporation, and it's all about the profit. So that
Mm-hmm.
if anything ever happened to their ad base went down, I'm sure it would go by the wayside up. It's very funny because you have this straight owned publication that goes out. I think they have like I think it's 25 different markets they sell to. So it's kind of
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It is interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned OutQ going under really surprised me. We had Logo TV, which started out with the best of intentions. Its own Logo is still around, in RuPaul's Drag Race is on it, and they have this new Finding Prince Charming, which you and I have discussed.
Right.
We'll withhold our judgment on that until the end, I guess. But Logo really kind of stepped back from the idea of an entire channel of LGBT original programming, which I think is a shame because there was definitely something to do there. And I just don't think the right people were in charge of it. And maybe that'll happen elsewhere. But also, with OutQ on Sirius XM, I used to listen to it all the time. I used to listen to Michelangelo Signorelli. They did, thankfully, he moved over to the Progress channel before OutQ was canceled.
Right.
But Larry Flick on OutQ, there were shows on OutQ. I mean, it was a great channel on Sirius XM for LGBT people to listen to. There were talk shows, there were like entertainment, there were music shows. So it's a good thing that we have Blog Talk Radio and Left of Straight to pick up some of that slack, in my opinion.
I agree. And then we also have Dave listening. He kind of chimed in for us. So, well, I guess the Blade, he was talking about the Blade. They've now started, I guess, blending their information with not just gay, but also gay-friendly content and delivering it more to the outside of the city where there's a lot of gay-friendly readers live. And he's kind of wondering if that might be the magic formula to kind of get the broader audiences out there to help keep these publications viable. So that's something to think about, too, because I know there's so many young kids around our area. They really go to the straight bars and go to the gay bars anymore. Our gay bars are having a real tough time in our area here because so many kids are just going with all their girlfriends and high school friends and college friends to all the straight bars. And it's kind of an interesting kind of thing, whether we need to kind of expand out and start. It's what we've always wanted is to kind of assimilate a bit, we always want to keep our own culture. So it's kind of real interesting.
Oh, I think you're right there. I think you're onto something, and I'm glad the listener said that. I think there is something to be said for that, especially in including LGBT allies and LGBT-friendly material, because certainly the more we kind of blend cultures a bit, the more we get along and the more unified we are as a community. I think that's a good idea for the right publication because if it opens up your readership, if it opens up your base, then I think that's a good idea. I really do.
Very cool. I love that. I just think that's great. I love kind of getting into those conversations because, like you said, besides the Randy Report, which I read every day, and a lot of our LGBT podcasts that we have out there, it's really kind of a whole, as you said, new media, and really takes a little getting used to. I think it's especially for the over 40 crowd, we'll say.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, and I love those over 40 crowds since I'm a part of it. And
exactly.
A good part. What's interesting to me too is, in terms of new media, is 5.5, almost 6 years ago when I started the Randy Report. It was because I'd taken about 2 years to read a couple of blogs every day to get my news, and I now realize that there are people telling me they get their news from some blog writers, or I've had people tell me they get news from the Randy Report, they get news from Joe My God, they get news from Toll Road. These are all LGBT blogs, but we all really kind of ride the daily news cycle, and so a lot of people get their news directly from there. Now, what I do on the Randy Report is I tend to tie back to really fact-checked sources like the Washington Post, the New York Times, but I also put my own spin on it, and I put my own imprint on my opinion because it is the Randy Report, thankyou.com. So, but that's another part of where people are getting their news now, so it's interesting. I do want to talk. Go ahead, go.
Well, I think that, like I said, that's one of my favorite things about yours. And like you said, Tara, we talk about every time you're on the show how you update tirelessly throughout the day. It's not like it's a once a day blog where they put one article up. You constantly bring things up, and that's the one thing I've always admired about you is you do all that fact checking behind it as well. So I think it's really cool when you have that kind of in depth and it's constantly updated. It makes it a really go to source. So that's why I recommend you all the time.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I do see some people on social media. I see a lot of people like see a headline and they just share it. They don't read the story. They like the headline. They share it. And it might be, we've all seen these on Facebook, kind of, maybe it's a political blog or a political site that gets shared on Facebook. And even if it aligns with our own views, it may not be factual. And the one thing I don't like seeing out there is when, even if it supports our view, that if it's not factual, it hurts us. So everything I post on the Randy Report, I make sure that I've gone back and I've looked at the source. I make sure that it's something that I can put my name behind. You know, it's not like I'm Donald Trump just retweeting something about neo-Nazis or something. Oh, I didn't know they were neo-Nazis. You know, I think it's important that people do pay attention to those. And certainly Andy Toll at Toll Road and Joe Jervis at Joe My God, I know they do the same things. So I think that is a part of the new media in that we can get our news from those sources. So I do try to be a source that people can depend on.
Well, you are, my friend. You definitely are.
Well, thank you. I did want to bring up, because two stories actually, well, one thing, just to make sure that people watch for it, because I think it's fun. But I wanted to ask what you think, because I'm sure you know the original. You know, they're about to reboot Rocky Horror Picture Show on Fox.
I am very looking forward to it. I think it's real interesting. Laverne Cox is fantastic casting. I love all the LGBT. We have Adam Lambert. We have Laverne Cox.
As Eddie, yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I think that was my gig when I was a kid. They'd play this every Friday night, midnight, at our local theater, and we'd go there with the toast and the newspapers and all the fun stuff. And that was our gig. I'm really looking forward to it again.
I am. I love that they're rethinking and doing these live stagings of musicals. Well, obviously with my background on Broadway, but to see things like Grease Live and The Wiz and Sound of Music and Peter Pan. So I'm curious to see how this goes. The one thing I want to see, and to a point you can almost anticipate, those hardcore Rocky Horror fans. And we know that they're out there. My brother was a hardcore Rocky Horror fan. And he had the cape made. He would get up on stage and he would be Frankenfurter in front of the live audience at the cinema on Friday and Saturdays, like you were describing. So I know there are going to be some people going, well, that's not right. Well, that's not right. Well, that's not right. You know, the choreography, the time warp is actually going to be different. Will people be able to handle that? But I think it's fascinating to imagine. And like you mentioned, we do have Adam Lambert, you know, from American Idol, who looks terrific. And I saw a preview behind the scenes from the rehearsals. He looks kind of like a zombie Elvis punk version of Eddie, which is perfectly fine with me. I love finding new things. And Laverne Cox, I've seen a bit of Laverne as Frankenfurter. What's also fun is Tim Curry, the original Frankenfurter from the movie, is in the movie as the professor.
That's what I thought. Okay, great. That is awesome.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun. So I'll be curious. It's October 20th on Fox. So everybody watch and call Scott and tell him what you think.
I am a little disappointed this isn't going to be live. I think they are pre-taping it. I remember seeing, unless they've changed it, because I remember Laverne Cox in an interview a while back, she said there's no way you're getting me to do this live, but there's so much dialogue to do. So I kind of wish it was live, but I can understand a little bit. There's a lot of set change going on, but they did so good going through Grease, I thought, going through that entire one-camera motion all through everything, that I was really hoping they would try to pull that off for Rocky Horror. But it's going to be a fun show. I'm really looking forward to it.
I really think so. And they're fitting it into 2 hours with commercial breaks. So they're really going to tighten it up. I think it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. So, and a lot of LGBT artists in there, so I'm looking that'll be fun.
Exactly. That's always a bonus. So I do love that. Well, what else do you have for me? Anything else pop culture wise before we go venture into politics? Because you know I've been on the road having to a couple of the times. Okay, I got to tell you about this one trip. We went to, I don't know if you followed on social media, but we were in um, Vermont, right? And my mom subscribes to that Vermont Country Store magazine. So we had a chance to go to the actual Vermont Country Store in Vermont. And as we're there, we go and we find out we're looking for a hotel because this was a very spur of the moment. Let's have fun trip where we didn't plan anything, didn't book hotels ahead of time. So we found a Fullerton Inn, our last name, the Fullerton Inn, like 10 miles from this Vermont store. We get there, and of course, I'm a bigger guy, and my mom, bless her heart, 79 years old, and I just booked the hotel sight unseen, right, because it was the Fullerton Inn. We get there, it's this gorgeous bed and breakfast, but it's the only rooms they have for two people is a 3-story walk-up, so we're dragging our butts without an elevator. There's no elevator. We're dragging our happy butts up these 3 flights of stairs, and then we get to our room, and there's no TV. And as political junkies we are, if we don't watch at least an hour of MSNBC a night, we get all crazy. So it's been kind of a funny trip that way. So I need you to fill me in politics in a bit, but I don't want to go on pop culture unless you're ready.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, the last thing I was going to mention in pop culture, just because it's interesting to me, I collected comic books when I was little. I love the idea of superheroes. And last week there were 2 stories that came out. One, if you're a Wonder Woman fan, and what gay man isn't?
Of course.
It was announced that Wonder Woman, you know, they're kind of rebooting the story of Wonder Woman on DC Comics. And the writers confirmed that Wonder Woman is officially bisexual. And I thought that was interesting, although it does make sense because the writer, Greg Rucka, gave an interview at Comicosity, which is a convention, and talked about the fact that, well, you know, Diana, Wonder Woman, is from Paradise Island. Right. And it's supposed to be paradise. You're supposed to live happily ever after. You're supposed to, you know, in the context of living happily ever after, have a partner. And since it's all women, to have a fulfilling romantic sexual relationship, and the only options are women, well, she had to be bisexual. Like, nobody addressed this for 60, 70 years. And the good news was, he said, as they're writing the reboot of her origin, nobody at DC Comics had an issue with this. Nobody blinked. Nobody said she has to be straight. And so I'll be curious to see if any aspect of this comes up in the big Wonder Woman movie that's supposed to come out in 2017.
That would be awesome. The one thing I do have to say, I'm like you, I'm a huge comic book fan. I am like addicted to the CW. Every season with the Flash and Arrow, and now they had Legends of Tomorrow coming out, and then of course they have Supergirl adding on this year, and they're bringing Superman onto Supergirl this year. So I'm going, and he's from Teen Wolf, which I absolutely love, Derek from Teen Wolf. So we have
Tyler.
Thank you. That's what I'm screaming. But anyway, I think Jeff Johns runs the DC television thing, and I think they are so progressive because they have the lesbian character in Arrow. They've done very well with it. That I think that it's a done issue for DC. I think they are very progressive now, and I don't see them going back. But like you said, let's see how far forward they will go, and it would be very interesting to see what they do in this movie. So I love
it's funny
that.
you
That's
mentioned.
awesome.
You mentioned the CW, and the other story that came out, and it was another gay superhero, is going to be incorporated into Legends of Tomorrow. There's a comic book character named Obsidian, who is technically the son of the Golden Age superhero Green Lantern. And over the years, it came out that he was gay and even had a boyfriend. Well, they're bringing this character of Obsidian into Legends of Tomorrow on the CW. Veteran actor Lance Henriksen, who I don't know if you remember, there was a sci-fi series back in 2000, 2001 called Millennium, and it was really good. If you're a sci-fi fan, go look it up. Great series. Anyway, he's going to play, there are going to be 2 incarnations of Obsidian. There's a younger guy and an older. And Lance Henriksen, in an interview to comicbook.com, said that the TV version of the character will remain true to the character in the comic book, sexuality and all. He told them that, Green Lantern's son is all that, and he's still gay. It's treated honestly and kind of not too gentle, and it's a real thing. At one point, someone asks him about a spouse or a girlfriend, and the character turns to the other hero and said, "Son, he's waiting for me at home." And so it's very straightforward. They don't